Hey everyone, welcome. So glad you're here with us today. We've got something really useful lined up for you. It's one of those things that trips people up all the time, even when they've been speaking English for years. And honestly, it used to confuse me too when I was younger. I'd write one version, then second guess myself and change it. It's super common, so don't worry if you've been there. We're going to clear it up in a way that actually makes sense. No complicated stuff, just real talk. Emily and I are going to walk through this together, and hopefully by the end, you'll never mix them up again. All right, let's get into it. Ready, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely ready. And Joe, you're so right about people getting confused with this one. I see it all the time, even in emails from native speakers. It's like one of those sneaky little things that looks almost the same but means something totally different. And the weird part is, once you get it, it's so obvious. But until that moment, it just feels like a guessing game every single time you write it. I think the problem is that they sound identical when you say them out loud, so your brain doesn't really register the difference. But when you write it down, suddenly it matters a lot. So yeah, I'm excited to break this down because it's honestly one of those small changes that makes your English sound way more natural and confident. And you know what's funny? I bet half the people watching have used both versions before and never even noticed which one they picked. It's just automatic sometimes.
Okay, so let me just start with a simple question for you, Emily. When you wake up in the morning, do you have an everyday routine or do you do the same things every day? See what I did there? I used both versions in one sentence, and they mean completely different things. That's exactly what we're talking about. So which one would you say? Like, how would you describe your morning? Because I think this is the easiest way to see the difference, just by using them in a real situation that everyone can relate to. Mornings are perfect for this, because most of us do have some kind of pattern, right? Whether it's making coffee, checking your phone, taking a shower, whatever it is. So go ahead, tell me about your morning. Use one of them, and let's see if it fits naturally.
Okay, good question. So I'd say I do the same things every day. Like I wake up, make coffee, check my phone, maybe stretch a little bit. That happens every single day, Monday through Sunday, no exceptions. So I'm using every day as two separate words there. Now, if I wanted to describe the kind of routine it is, I'd say it's my everyday routine. One word, no space. That's describing the type of routine. It's ordinary, normal, regular, nothing fancy. See the difference? One is about frequency, like how often something happens. The other is about the kind of thing it is. It's describing it. So every day is about time, and every day is about type. Does that make sense so far, Joe? Because I feel like this is where people start to see the light. It's like, oh, one tells you when, and the other tells you what kind.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I love how you said ordinary and regular, because that's really what everyday means when it's one word. It's like saying something is common or usual. You could say, these are my everyday shoes, meaning they're the ones you wear all the time, not your fancy ones. Or you could say, I wear these shoes every day, meaning you put them on daily. Same shoes, same idea, but the grammar is doing different work in each sentence. It's wild how one little space changes everything. And honestly, I think that's why people mess it up. They're thinking about the meaning, not the structure. But you don't need to think about structure if you just feel the difference in how it's used. Let me give you another example. I drink coffee every day. That's my habit. But coffee is part of my everyday life. See? Same thing, different jobs. And that everyday life phrase is so common, right? People say it all the time.
Exactly. And I think what helps me remember is that every day as one word is almost like an adjective. It's describing something. Like you wouldn't say a everyday problem, right? That sounds completely wrong. You'd say an everyday problem, which means a common problem, something normal people deal with. But you would say I deal with this problem every day, because now you're talking about how often it happens. So if you're talking about how often, it's two words. If you're describing what kind of thing it is, it's one word. And another thing, if you can replace it with ordinary or normal and the sentence still works, then it's one word. That's a pretty easy trick to use when you're not sure. I wish someone had told me that years ago. It would have saved me so much confusion. Like, seriously, I used to just guess and hope for the best.
Oh, that's a great trick. I'm going to use that from now on. Let me test it real quick. I have everyday stress. Can I replace everyday with ordinary? Yeah, I have ordinary stress. That works. so it's one word. Now, I feel stressed every day. Can I replace every day with ordinary? No, that would be I feel stressed ordinary, which is nonsense. So it's two words. Boom. That's actually super helpful, Emily. I feel like that's one of those things that once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It just clicks. And I bet a lot of people watching are having that moment right now. It's like when you finally understand the difference between your and your. Once you get it, it seems so simple, but until then, it's a total mystery. And stress is such a perfect example because everyone deals with it, right? Whether it's everyday stress or stress that happens every day.
Right, and let's be honest, even native speakers mess this up sometimes. I've seen it in text messages, social media posts, even professional emails. People write every day when they mean every day, and vice versa. So if you've been getting it wrong, you're in good company. But now you're going to be ahead of a lot of people because you actually know the difference. Let's do more examples, though, because I think the more you hear it in context, the more natural it becomes. So let's say you're talking about food. You might say, I eat rice every day, right? That's talking about frequency. But you could also say, rice is part of my everyday meals. That's describing the type of meals. Or, I don't cook fancy dishes, I just make everyday food. That means simple, normal food, nothing special. The kind of stuff you throw together on a Tuesday night when you're tired.
Yeah, and sticking with food, you could say, I go to the grocery store every day, if you're someone who shops daily. But you wouldn't say, I go to the everyday grocery store. Well, actually, wait, you could say that, but it would mean something different. It would mean the regular grocery store, the one you always go to, not a special one. So that's another case where both could work, but they mean different things. It's all about context. And that's what makes English tricky, but also kind of fun. You have to think about what you're really trying to say. Are you talking about how often, or are you describing the thing itself? That's the key question. And once you start asking yourself that, it becomes automatic. You don't even have to think about it anymore. It's like driving. At first, you think about every little thing, but then it just happens.
True. Let's try some work examples now, because that's another place where this comes up a lot. You might say, I check my email every day. That's a daily habit. But you could also say, checking email is part of my everyday responsibilities. See? One is about the action happening daily, and the other is about the nature of the responsibility. It's routine, it's normal. Or let's say you're talking to a coworker. You might say, do you deal with difficult customers every day? You're asking about frequency, but if you say, dealing with difficult customers is an everyday challenge, you're saying it's a common, regular challenge, part of the normal job. Both are correct, both are useful, but they're not interchangeable. You can't just swap them and have the sentence still make sense. That's the mistake people make. They think they can just switch them around.
Yeah, and here's a mistake I used to make all the time before I really understood this. I'd say something like, I have everyday problems, thinking I was saying I have problems every single day, but that's wrong. If you want to say you have problems daily, you'd say, I have problems every day. Two words. But if you want to describe the type of problems, like they're ordinary, common problems, you'd say, I have everyday problems. One word. So the sentence structure totally changes depending on which version you use. And that's where people get tripped up. They think the words are interchangeable, but they're not. They do different things in a sentence. It's like the difference between saying a fast car and a car fast. One works, one doesn't. Word order and spacing matter in English. It's annoying, but it's true.
Absolutely. And let's talk about clothes for a second, because that's another super common area. You might say, I wear jeans every day. That's about how often you wear them. But you'd also say, these are my everyday jeans, meaning they're your regular, casual jeans, not your dressy ones. Or, I don't dress up, I just wear everyday clothes. That means normal, simple clothes. But if someone asked, do you dress up every day? You'd be talking about whether you do it daily. So again, same idea, different function. And I think once you see it in enough different contexts, morning routines, food, work, clothes, it really starts to sink in. You start to feel the difference instead of just trying to memorize a rule. That's the goal here. We want you to feel it, not just know it. Because feeling it means you'll use it correctly without even thinking.
Exactly. And here's the thing. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being clear. If you mix them up in conversation, people will probably still understand you because of context. But if you get it right, you sound more polished, more confident, more natural. And that's what we all want, right? To sound like we really know what we're doing. So next time you're writing an email or a text, or even just talking, pause for a second and ask yourself, am I talking about how often something happens, or am I describing what kind of thing it is? That one little question will save you every single time. And honestly, after a while, you won't even need to ask. It'll just be obvious. Your brain will do it automatically. That's how language learning works. Repetition, context, and practice. So keep using both versions, keep noticing the difference, and soon enough, it'll be second nature.
You know what? Let's throw in some more situations because I think variety really helps here. Let's talk about exercise. So you might say, I go to the gym every day, and that's about your schedule, your frequency. But you could also say, these are my everyday workout clothes, meaning they're your regular ones, not anything special. Or let's say you're talking about your commute. I take the bus every day, versus taking the bus is part of my everyday routine. See how that works? The first one is about how often, and the other is about the nature of your routine. It's a pattern, it's normal, it's what you do. And I think commuting is something everyone can relate to, whether it's driving, taking public transport, walking, whatever.
Yeah, and let's think about technology too, because we all use it constantly. You might say, I check social media every day, which is about frequency, but you could also say social media is part of my everyday life, which is describing the role it plays in your life. It's ordinary, it's normal, it's integrated into what you do. Or I use my phone for everyday tasks, meaning regular, common tasks, like texting, checking the weather, setting alarms. But you'd say, I use my phone every day, talking about how often. And honestly, with how much we're all on our phones, these are super relevant examples. Like, I probably check my phone 100 times every day, and my phone is definitely an everyday object for me. See? Both versions in 2 sentences, and they both make perfect sense.
That's perfect. And let's talk about shopping because that's another good one. You might say, I shop online every day, if you're someone who's always browsing and buying stuff. But you'd say, online shopping is an everyday convenience, meaning it's a normal, common convenience that people have access to regularly. Or, I buy everyday items like bread and milk, which means ordinary, basic items, nothing fancy. But you wouldn't say, I buy everyday items, because that doesn't make sense. You're describing the type of items, so it's one word. And I think grocery shopping is such a universal experience that everyone gets it. We all need to buy food, toiletries, household stuff. Those are everyday purchases, but we don't all shop every day.
Right, and that's a good point. Not everyone does things every day, but everyone has everyday things in their life. Like, I don't go to the store every day, but I definitely have everyday items in my kitchen. I don't work out every day, but I have everyday activewear. You see what I mean? The everyday version is about the type, the category, the nature of something. It's not about frequency. So you can have everyday habits without doing them every day, which sounds confusing, but actually makes sense when you think about it. Like watching TV might be an everyday habit for you, meaning it's a normal part of your life, but maybe you don't actually watch TV every single day. Maybe you skip weekends or something.
Oh, that's a really good distinction. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're totally right. Something can be every day without happening every day. That's kind of mind-blowing, actually. Like, driving might be an everyday activity for most people, but maybe someone doesn't drive every day if they work from home. Or cooking might be an everyday skill, but you might not cook every day if you eat out sometimes. So the one-word version is more about normalcy and routine than literal daily occurrence. That's a subtle but important difference. And I think that's where the confusion really comes from. People assume every day means every day, but it doesn't. It means ordinary or typical or regular. The frequency part is separate.
Exactly. And let's think about weather for a second, because that's something we all talk about. You might say, it rains every day here, if you live somewhere with a lot of rain. That's about frequency, but you wouldn't really say everyday rain unless you're describing typical rain, like this is just everyday rain, nothing heavy. But that's a bit of an unusual use. More commonly, you'd talk about everyday weather, meaning typical weather for your area. Or you might say, checking the weather is part of my everyday routine, which makes sense because it's a normal, regular thing you do. But you'd say, I check the weather every day, talking about how often. So even with weather, you can see both versions working in different ways.
Good examples. And what about talking, communication? You could say, I talk to my mom every day, and that's about frequency. You call her daily. But you could also say, talking to my mom is an everyday joy, meaning it's a regular, normal joy in your life, something that's part of your routine happiness. Or we have everyday conversations about normal stuff, meaning typical, ordinary conversations, not deep philosophical talks or anything. But you'd say, we talk every day, referring to how often. And I think family communication is something a lot of people can relate to. Some people text their family every day, some people call, some people do video chats. It's all different, but it's all part of everyday life for many people.
Yeah, and relationships in general are a great area for this. You might say, I see my best friend every day if you work together or live close by. But you'd say, my best friend is part of my everyday happiness, describing the role they play in your normal, regular life. Or you could talk about everyday interactions with neighbors, coworkers, strangers. Those are typical, normal interactions, the kind you have regularly. But you might not have them every single day. Like I have everyday interactions with my neighbors, meaning normal, friendly chats, but I don't actually see them every single day. Sometimes I go days without running into them. So again, it's about the type or nature of something, not the frequency.
That's such a clear way to put it. And let's think about learning, since that's kind of what we're doing right now. You might say, I study English every day, and that's about your daily practice. But you'd say, English is an everyday necessity for me, meaning it's a regular, normal part of your life that you need. Or I use everyday English expressions, meaning common, typical expressions, not formal or academic language. But you'd say, I practice expressions every day, talking about frequency. And for anyone learning English, both of these are probably true. You probably do study or practice every day, or try to, and English is probably an everyday need if you're working on it seriously.
Absolutely. And let's talk about money, because everyone deals with that. You might say, I check my bank account every day, which is about how often you check it. But you'd say budgeting is an everyday concern, meaning it's a normal, regular concern, something you think about as part of your typical life. Or I spend money on everyday expenses like rent and groceries, which means ordinary, regular expenses, the basics. But you'd say, I spend money every day, talking about frequency. And honestly, money is one of those things that's both. It's an everyday topic, meaning we all deal with it regularly, and many of us think about it or spend it every day. So you'd use both versions when talking about finances.
Right. And what about entertainment? You could say, I watch Netflix every day, about how often you watch. But you'd say, watching Netflix is an everyday relaxation method, describing it as a typical, normal way you relax. Or, I listen to everyday music, nothing too fancy or classical, meaning regular, popular, common music. But you'd say, I listen to music every day, about frequency. And entertainment is such a big part of life for most people, whether it's TV, music, podcasts, books, games, whatever. We all have everyday forms of entertainment that we might enjoy every day or just regularly. It's how we unwind, how we relax, how we escape from everyday stress.
Perfect example. And, let's talk about health, too, because that's important. You might say, I take vitamins every day, which is about your daily routine. But you'd say, taking care of my health is an everyday priority, meaning it's a regular, ongoing priority, part of your normal focus. Or, I deal with everyday aches and pains, meaning typical minor aches, nothing serious. But you'd say, I exercise every day, talking about frequency. And health is one of those things where both versions make sense in different contexts. You have everyday health habits, and you might do healthy things every day. It all depends on what you're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've covered so many different areas now: work, food, clothes, technology, shopping, weather, relationships, learning, money, entertainment, health. The pattern is always the same. Every day, with a space, is about how often something happens. Every day as one word is about describing the type or nature of something. It means ordinary, typical, normal, regular. Once you see that pattern in all these different contexts, it becomes really clear. It's not some weird exception or confusing rule. It's actually very consistent. The hard part is just remembering which one to use in the moment. But if you pause and think about whether you're talking about frequency or description, you'll get it right.
And here's another way to think about it. If you're using it right before a noun, like everyday shoes or everyday problems, it's almost always going to be one word because you're describing that noun. You're saying what kind of shoes or what kind of problems. But if you're talking about an action or a state, like I run every day or this happens every day, it's two words because you're talking about when or how often. So the position in the sentence can give you a clue. If it's right before a thing, it's probably one word. If it's at the end of a sentence or after a verb, it's probably two words. That's not a perfect rule, but it works most of the time.
That's a really helpful tip. Let me try that with a few sentences. I have everyday worries. It's before a noun, so one word. I worry every day. It's after a verb, so two words. These are everyday challenges. Before a noun, one word. I face challenges every day. After a verb, two words. Yeah, that pattern really does work. Obviously, there are probably some exceptions somewhere, but for the most part, that's a solid guideline. And I think combining that with the meaning check, asking yourself if you mean ordinary or how often, you've got two good tools to figure it out. Between those two checks, you should be able to nail it pretty much every time.
Exactly. And you know what? Let's give people some sentences to practice with mentally. I'll say a sentence and you can think about whether it should be every day or every day. Ready? Here's the first one. I drink water, blank. What goes in the blank? Well, you're talking about how often you drink water, so it's every day, two words. Next one. This is my blank backpack. You're describing the type of backpack, so every day, one word. Another one. Traffic is an blank frustration in big cities. You're describing the type of frustration, so every day, one word. And one more. Do you exercise blank? You're asking about frequency, so every day, two words. See how that works?
Those are great practice sentences. Let me add a few more. I read blank. That's about frequency, so every day, two words. Reading is in blank pleasure. That's describing the type of pleasure, so every day, one word. She wears blank makeup, nothing dramatic. Describing the type, so every day, one word. She applies makeup, blank. Frequency, so every day, two words. And honestly, if people just go through their own lives and think about their routines and habits and try making sentences with both versions, they'll get so much practice. Like, think about what you do daily and what ordinary things you have in your life. Then try saying sentences about them using the right version.
That's perfect homework, actually. Just go through your day and describe it using both versions where appropriate. I wake up every day at 7. Waking up early is part of my everyday routine. I eat breakfast every day. Breakfast is an everyday necessity for me. Just keep doing that and you'll internalize the difference. And the beautiful thing is, once you've got this down, you'll start noticing when other people get it wrong. You'll see it in emails, in social media posts, in articles, and you'll be like, oh, that should be two words, or that should be one word. It's kind of satisfying, actually, in a nerdy way. You'll feel like you're in on a secret that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, it's true. You do start to notice it everywhere once you understand it, and it makes you feel more confident about your own English too. Like, if you can nail this tricky little distinction that even native speakers mess up sometimes, then you're doing pretty well. And confidence is such a huge part of language learning. The more confident you feel, the more you're willing to use the language, and the better you get. It's a positive cycle. So, honestly, mastering something like this, it's not just about the grammar or the vocabulary, it's about building that sense of, I know what I'm doing, I've got this. And that feeling is priceless.
Absolutely. And I want to emphasize one more time that this is not about being perfect or never making mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, even in their native language. The goal is just to understand the difference so that when it matters, like in a job application or a professional email, or when you're trying to make a good impression, you can get it right. In casual conversation, if you mix them up, it's really not the end of the world. People will still understand you, but knowing the difference gives you options. It gives you control over your language, and that's what we're all working toward, right? Having more control, more precision, more ability to express exactly what we mean.
Well said, and I think that's a good place to wrap up. We've talked about the difference between everyday and everyday in so many different contexts. We've looked at morning routines, food, work, clothes, technology, shopping, weather, relationships, learning, money, entertainment, and health. We've given you tricks like replacing everyday with ordinary to see if it fits, and checking whether it comes before a noun or after a verb. We've emphasized that every day is about frequency and every day is about describing something as normal or typical. And we've encouraged you to practice by thinking about your own life and making sentences with both versions. If you do that, this will become natural for you really quickly.
Yeah, and remember, language learning is a journey. You're not going to remember everything perfectly after one conversation, and that's totally fine. The important thing is that you now have the tools and the understanding to figure it out when you need to. And the more you use these words in real situations, the more automatic it becomes. So don't stress about it. Just keep practicing, keep noticing how other people use these words, and keep building your confidence. You've got this. And hey, if you ever forget, just come back to this conversation and refresh your memory. That's what learning resources are for. We're here to help you make sense of these tricky little parts of English that can be so confusing.
Exactly. Well, thanks for hanging out with us and going through all of this. I hope it's been helpful and not too overwhelming. The main thing to remember is just to ask yourself, am I talking about how often or am I describing what kind? That question will guide you to the right answer almost every time. And with practice, you won't even need to ask the question anymore. It'll just feel right. So keep at it, keep learning, and don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way. That's how we all get better. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you next time. Keep practicing that everyday English every day.
Perfect way to end it, Emily. Yeah, keep using your everyday skills every day, and you'll be amazed at how much progress you make. Thanks, everyone, and see you soon.